Wow, I am really back, and it feels really good to be back after such a long time. But I'm not going to get emotional. Let's get started by actually going back to a franchise that I thought I was done with a few years ago, but that turned out not to be true. A few years ago, I reviewed the entire Harry Potter film franchise, and I thought I had wrapped up the video game franchise along with it, but that turned out not to be true, as two very interesting additions have been released, and that's the LEGO Harry Potter games. I won't lie, I'm not a huge fan of the LEGO franchise, which is one of the reasons why these two games passed me by so easily. They're not horrible or anything like that, but after the Star Wars LEGO games, the novelty really wore off for me after that, and other games just seemed like pointless additions. However, being a fan of the Harry Potter franchise, loving the books, movies, and some of the games as well, I couldn't really keep myself from at least giving the LEGO Harry Potter games a try. Unlike most of my series reviews, I'll review these two games in one review. The two games go in complete order, with the first game doing the first four movies and the second doing the last four. The story is told through cutscenes that are without dialogue but is loaded with music from the franchise and sound effects as well. Also, everything has been given a bit more of a comedic touch than that of the movies. For some reason, Harry Potter's story feels far better translated into a LEGO game than previous LEGO games had been, of course not named Star Wars. I think this has a lot to do with the fact that despite how book fans might feel about the movie franchise, the movies are told in greater detail than that of other franchises that have been translated into LEGO games. This gave a lot more room for the developers to work within and to make the games far more detailed in story, something that the franchise had been lacking when they ventured away from Star Wars. The story also made for far more interesting gameplay. The different spells already made this LEGO game far more interesting than its predecessors. While the spell system was nothing new for previous Harry Potter games, it was a welcome addition to the LEGO franchise. The different spells not only help with the variety of missions, but also help with the environments, which you can manipulate quite a bit in these games. On that note, the structure of the environments from Harry Potter are far more grand and more video game worthy than the franchises like Pirates of the Caribbean and even Indiana Jones. The developers used everything in the environments to their disposal and tried to add as much fun to them as possible, whether it be puzzles for the missions or something as simple as finding characters to unlock. With that being said, the environments do present a flaw that I've hated about these games, and it's been a flaw that's bothered me most, especially since the franchise entered the 360 and PS3 era, and that's the size of the levels. We're talking about two consoles that held the huge landscape of Grand Theft Auto V, and yet each of the main levels like Hogwarts, Diagon Alley, and others have more loading times than what should be allowed for one game, and the levels are always split up oddly. Hogwarts alone is split up into over a dozen sections, and each section is tiny. If you're someone who just wants to play the game by doing the missions and don't want to free roam right away, you'll have to deal with the screen constantly cutting to black every millisecond. I know it only takes a second for the environment to pop up, but it's still annoying. Now, the difficulty level of both games is a bit of a juggling act. Some missions are very easy, like unlocking the vaulted Gringotts in the first game, then some are relatively difficult, like preparing the fireworks for the Weasley twins in the second game. The first game was a bit difficult with the problem-solving elements, but it wasn't necessarily difficult in terms of finding out the solution, but actually getting the solution to work. For instance, one of the very few technical improvements from the first to second game was the controlling of various objects and connecting those objects. A good example of this is Professor Flitwick's classes in the first game. In the first game, you had to assemble stairs to get up to the second level of the class. Sounds easy enough, but actually getting them to connect was a problem. There were moments when I actually had the stairs in the right position, but they still weren't connected. This was rectified in the second game and made easier to deal with. However, the problem solving in the second game is far more difficult on several missions because a lot of it is not in plain view and takes a lot of wandering to figure out, and a lot of this has to do with the selected camera angle for each environment, with most of it being convenient and others being horribly positioned, which is not new for this franchise. From a graphical standpoint, LEGO Harry Potter is a slight improvement over the previous games. The environments are sharper, and the overall detail of the cutscenes and gameplay is better structured than the last few games have been. The environments and the character models are very good. Now, a couple of characters are obviously characters that they couldn't convert into LEGO characters, so characters like goblins look very similar to what they would look like in the movies. The environments are gorgeous in both games and are recreated very well for the game. In fact, it can be argued argue that the LEGO Harry Potter games look far better and more like their movie counterparts than the actual licensed game that came out for each movie's release. Just for the record, there is very little, if any, difference appearance-wise between the first game and the second. The controls are simplistic for the most part. The only downside is that moving objects can be a bit of a problem because they don't move as freely as you would think. So overall, the LEGO Harry Potter games are very good, and it can be argued that these games are far more entertaining and well put together than any of the previous LEGO games, including Star Wars. Well, everyone, that is it for now. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.